Hello and welcome to Some of My Friends Read Comics. We've got Vince.
Now I know why you call yourself Killer Croc, because you're nothing but a croc.
Oh, whoa, wow. Okay, starting off hot. Chris, we got Chris.
In Gotham City, you asked, detained in my being?
Nice, and I'm Kia. Hi, welcome to the show. We have those are two quotes from our long read, Marvel versus DC, which we've been reading. We'll get to that at the end of the show. We're on issue 2 there. But our main feature for this episode today is Bad Weekend. Is it Criminal Bad Weekend or just Bad Weekend? It is like a spinoff, right?
So the hardcover was printed as just Bad Weekend without any actual like criminal imagery on the cover, which is weird. So Criminal is a long-standing book by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. They come back to it. They're I think one of the coolest comic book pairs because like a normal like prose writer, they don't stick necessarily with the same series. They did one about like old Hollywood, which I loved, called The Fade Out. They had a mild vigilante book called Kill or Be Killed, and they had a Fatale book about femme fatales.
They've done a lot of work together.
Yeah, and so they just kind of jump around doing like maybe like a year or two on a book, and then they abandon it. But Criminal they keep coming back to. So Criminal was originally published as, I would say, like 12 or so issues back in like 06 to 08. And then they left it, came back for Criminal Volume 2. And this is one of the more recent Criminal volumes, issues 2 and 3. And then they expanded it for the collected edition, is my understanding. Because I never read the individual issues, because it's hard to track down individual issues of indie comics. Like, I want 2 and 3 of Criminal Volume 4. Like, trying to get your pull list together to see, like, I want this, and it may come out sometime, is really hard. So, I just wait for the hardcovers for Brubaker and Phillips books.
Yeah, and like Image definitely has a trade paperback kind of business model where they'll give you like a 6-issue run of whatever you want, but then they're like, we don't know, like we might give you another one in a year. Like it seems hit or miss. Like the Image has put out a lot of comics I liked in the past few years, and then won't put out more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of the more recent comics again that we've read. This is 2019, super recently that they came back to this. And I really have not read much Criminal at all. I've read a few of their other things here and there that I can't remember which ones, but I don't know how much this. Go ahead.
The first book I had read of theirs was Sleeper for Wildstorm, which was like a spin-off of a grifter book.
Kind of barely a spin-off. I feel like it did very well standalone by itself. But yeah, I always enjoyed that style. It's very real people, not spy kind of stuff, crime kind of stuff, all that. And yeah, I don't know how much this relates to the old Criminal kind of stuff. You don't really seem to need any knowledge of it whatsoever. It's a pretty good standalone.
It actually follows a different. The main character Jacob actually was in a different book. We're doing Bad Weekend. I don't know if we said that, but he had another book called Bad Night from 08, which was a 6-issue arc. You can buy it in multiple different collected editions, which, given the timeline, I have no idea where it relates because they never put years on things, but Bad Weekend takes place sometime in the late 90s.
Yeah, this is very, very much in the 90s. So
yeah, they said that means 1997 is what they said at the beginning.
But his stuff, the prior, was it like volume 3, 2 or 3? One of the
4,
early.
Yeah.
4, okay.
It's actually, Brubaker put enough into it that he stopped writing Criminal. Bad Night, I think was a little too, his own personal focus. It's about a down on his luck comic writer who's got some demons and a little so he stopped writing Criminal, and that's when him and Phillips decided to write Incognito, which is a book I didn't like. But that one, Jacob talks about being like a former thief, but also being in some type of injury where he had to go through physical therapy, and he never alludes to that at all in Bad Weekend. So I don't know if that happens later in the timeline or not. Criminal jumps around. It usually focuses around the Lawless family. They're the patriarch Teague Lawless, and then his children Tracy and Ricky Lawless. Ricky shows up in this book, but
yes, I remember him. Yeah,
but it's never told. Generally the arcs are told linearly, like within its arc. But each arc to arc can follow a different character. There's been a few that followed Tracy. There's been a few that have now followed this guy Jacob. Ricky's been in a few stories, and there's been one about one last year or a year before that was about Teague and his son Tracy, with Tracy as a kid as opposed to being an adult. It just jumps through the timeline. So I don't know the full timeline because I've been reading this over 15 years and not actively paying attention to them because they're all standalone stories. So
yeah,
you don't
I
need
feel
them.
like it's like it could be fun to sit there and piece it all together, but I'm not super concerned about that. I'm just like,
more,
cool story.
It's more flavor. It's interesting to know, like, Jacob ends up being a newspaper strip artist. That's what he's in Bad Night. If you're wondering, like, where he fit in as a comics professional. But again, I don't know if that was in the mid 2000s or before the book that we're reading today.
I get the sense it was before, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. So let's just kind of jump into the story here. Give ourselves a little context as to what's going on. Like, we should clarify. We've talked about being comics professionals in this. That's like in this story. This is a story about being in the comic world and like working on comics as an inker and that kind of stuff. Our main character, Jacob, who we're following here, it starts off with a call for him to be the assistant to this old guy named Hal Crane, who's like a comic book legend, but a real, just total asshole in the industry. Has just burned every bridge, that kind of thing, but is still just like a little bit of a legend. He created a fictitious series called Danny Dagger and the Fantasticals, which is it's perfect. I don't know what it reminds me of exactly, like kind of that Johnny Questy kind of vibe, but a little more fantasy. I don't know. Like if it's a direct parody of anything, but it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's Prince Valiant, it's He-Man, it's She-Ra.
Right, it's all that kind of stuff. Yeah, right. Yeah. And like very Hanna-Barbera kind of feeling, like it became a 70s cartoon that he didn't make as much money off of as he would have liked, that kind of thing, and he's bitter about it. And yeah, he's just a real jerk. And our main character, Jacob, used to be this guy's assistant for a little while. And you know, he had tons of assistants who all just kind of came and went because he was a real jerk to them. And Jacob, for whatever reason, is like, you know, Hal requests him to say, I want him to be my, you know, the guy who's kind of showing me around the comic convention, Comic Fest, I think they call it. And so, you know, the thing kind of gets started. Jacob goes to Hal. They meet up at the convention. And Hal's just this real male chauvinist kind of guy. He's hitting on just some fan who's dressed up thinking she's a prostitute or a booth babe or something like that. Like, hey, come on, man, don't be a jerk. And Hal just doesn't want to have anything to do with this convention. He hates being there. He refuses to go to this panel that he's supposed to be at because it's just like a bunch of old people. He's like, I'm not going to that old people panel.
Which I get. I mean, it's a character, and I love the pull quote on the back of it. Kelly Sue DeConnick of Bitch Planet and Captain Marvel. She's like, "Bad Weekend is the ghost of Christmas future that all freelancers fear." Like, it's clearly a guy who's like past his prime. And like when you're getting like a lifetime achievement award, it's kind of like bittersweet. It's like your life is done. You're not going to create anything more. You're not going to create another masterpiece. So like I get this kind of like downness that like your glory days are 20, 30 years behind you, and everybody kind of knows it. And you know, and I can imagine being a creator where you're like kind of sour, like I didn't really like this shit, but everybody loves it, and like having to put on that smiley face and tell the same story for 20 years, and that's kind of like the weird hustle bustle of being a comics professional, is that a lot of the money is being made not through like selling your art, but through selling like sketches and signings at conventions. And if you're not about that life, it can be really weird.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And yeah, it's rough. I thank you for mentioning. I failed to mention Hal is getting like a lifetime achievement award kind of thing at this convention here. So that's one of the big central things. Like he's scheduled to be at all sorts of different parts of it, but it's going to culminate in this award that he's getting. But yeah, it is like I feel for the guy a little bit. Like he's a total asshole, and I hate him. But at the same time, like yeah, he doesn't want to be there, so why does he have to be there?
But he's still a jerk. Like, I mean, I feel like this obligation, like, you said you were going to be at this, like, panel. Like,
right.
People paid money to go see your fucking panel, whether or not you want to be there and don't respect it. Like, just do the hour, get paid your $1,000 or whatever, and go. Like, I don't...
Yeah.
Like, that's the part that was, like, instant... Like, that's the weird triggering part for me. Was like, why the fuck didn't he go to his appointment? Like, I don't know why I got... The both times I've read this book, like, that's the trigger point. Like, nope, I'm done with this guy.
Yeah, I hate it. I hate that, like, just missing appointments. Like, don't make an appointment if you're gonna miss it.
I know, but can you imagine like wanting to go, like, oh, you know, like there's all these panels going on, like the Supernatural cast is in this hall and such, and then like, oh, Matt Fraction. I'm gonna say Matt Fraction because I like him. Like Matt Fraction and Ed Brubaker are gonna be this panel, and Matt Fraction just doesn't show up. Like, how the he's an asshole. I would be so mad if he did that, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I met Neil Adams at a comic convention, and he was an asshole, but he was there, you know. Like, he didn't just no-show it, and we're just like, hey, where's Neil Adams? He's not charging $100 to sign something.
Yeah.
Now remembering, Vince, that time that we were first in line to meet Dave Gibbons, but actually we were last in line.
Well, because we lingered around not realizing there was a line outside. We're like, well, this is where they're setting up. We'll stand right here next to where they're setting up. And we lingered for like an hour. That was on us. We saw Dave Gibbons. I didn't need it. I don't care enough about Watchmen to be like, I met Dave Gibbons for free.
Yeah, I didn't need to shake his hand. I stood at a table and saw him. I was like, oh, that's him. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Good story. What happens? Jacob is already terrible at his job because he doesn't even try to get Hal to go to this panel. Yeah, they just start driving around.
Jacob's also like wondering. Jacob's like not the main character, but is the narrator, which is kind of weird because it's definitely like Hal's story.
Yeah.
But Jacob's like wondering, like Hal had a ton of assistants and he pissed them off. Like I don't know why he's picking me. Like that's what. Like why did he specifically call for me to be here?
Right. That's what makes me think this is after his criminal storyline, because we find out about his criminal connections in that story.
Okay, yeah.
That makes sense. So they're driving, and we kind of get a little bit more backstory about how Hal used to be the assistant way back when in the 50s to a guy named Archie Lewis, who created a comic called Star King, which was huge. And there's some story about how in the 50s Archie was driving, crashed into a wall. Archie is dead. Hal does not die, but it's like that moment just kind of changed him forever and made him this bitter guy that he is now, because he used to be all happy-go-lucky before that. And it's just no longer. It kind of derailed his whole career, and that's it. And so that's
this book, like though its narration goes over like present day action when it does like it's like talking about the past. It's a really Brubaker just does this in general. Like he does a really good job of like weaving in the past and the present. Mm-hmm. He does a good job with this. Something that people might have read more actually that's bigger, more famous than this is he basically created the Winter Soldier. He obviously didn't create Bucky Barnes, but he created the Winter Soldier for Captain America. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, very similar way of like Cap remembering his 1940s days while still like doing action in the present. Like I think Brubaker does a really good job of weaving in the present and the past. And like this is a 72-page story, but I feel like we got Hal's entire life story.
Really. Yeah, I feel like he generally just does a good job of like reminiscing about the past without necessarily like romanticizing it. I don't know.
Right.
He's good at that kind of stuff. Turns out this guy's a good writer. So we get okay. So here comes the crime. Yeah, we get some information about the crime now. Somebody has. Oh no! Sorry, this is a different thing. This is Hal just kind of again being a jerk and making a buck however he can. I thought this was going to be the big crime central focus of the story. That's why I wrote down these notes. Like, all right, here's our crime, baby. Counterfeit animation cells that this guy has made from his old cartoon show, and Hal signs them and some other guy sells them, and that's like I'm like, okay, they're gonna get in trouble for this. All right. That's not where the story goes at all. It's just kind of another angle of how he's not made any money off of his work and he's just trying to do whatever he can. We'll hear stories about this guy named who's the guy who owned the animation company that they turned into the cartoon. Frank Harmony. Yeah, and this guy...
Your Ruby Spears, your Hanna-Barbera, whatever.
Exactly, yeah. Like, he's the one who made all the money, and, of course, Hal's bitter about it. So, yeah, he's just trying to make a buck however he can, signing these counterfeit animation cells. Some other guy goes to sell them, like, on the black market of collectors, and, makes an extra buck off of it. But we don't really return to that angle at all, do we? I thought it was going to be a more major thing.
No, it ends up being more flavor to just show that Hal is like kind of unscrupulous, but also it's really good at like showing the dark side of the comic industry. And like this is how they're making their money, and this is one way to make like an extra few bucks is to fake that you have original work. And I'm sure Brubaker's pulling on like hearsay, stories talking with old timers or present timers that I'm sure that other people have done this before.
Yeah. So they go back to the convention again. Hal has to sit there for a second to sign some stuff. Apparently there was a line, but everyone left when he didn't show, but there's still one guy waiting. And Hal just like kind of can't stand this. He's like, all right, I'm out of here as soon as they make the announcement that he's there. And so they just go to the bar.
Yeah, this book, though, makes a very good, at least for me, like I can't get a vibe for whether or not people in 1997 care about Hal Crane. Like,
yeah,
like
I couldn't
the comic convention coordinators care about him as like a big name. But like, I don't get a feeling like, because you never see like the line. And I think that's like Hal's thing, because Hal's never going to turn whether or not there's a bunch of people seeing him or not, because he doesn't give a shit about the pieces that people care about, like this Dick Dagger or whatever. He doesn't care about it. So like, if he had like a bunch of fans, that's not going to like change his mind, and him being like warmed in his heart is going to like change. That's how his arc is going to go. Like, it doesn't matter whether or not he has fans or not, so they don't show it.
Yeah. But at the same time, like I don't know. I kind of get the sense of where he's at, because I've been to comic conventions again. He's kind of Hal's a pastiche. I think he's more Gil Kane and Wally Wood than anybody else. But I saw Joe Kubert at a convention before he died the same year I saw him, unfortunately. And like, there was not a big line, but there were like the people that did, it's like the people that really want to see him are going to see him, like, it's just kind of how it works, is like, there's not a huge demand anymore. And of course, this was in like 2011 or 2012. So this was way after anybody really knew who Joe Kubert was. But I think it's similar. I saw Wheezy and her husband, who did that Thor run, and now I'm blanking on his name. Walt Simonson, yes. Walt and Louise Simonson. And like, there was not a big crowd to see them. And so I think that he's kind of in a similar place now, or in 1997, that they were in 2015, where it's like, people want to see them, but they're also like not a big deal,
Yeah.
Which is like all fandoms, not just comic fandoms. I mean, I'm sure musicians have this arc. Everybody, a lot of artists do.
Yeah, I do like the ambush journalism guy who's completely unprepared, where he's just like, "Oh yeah, I heard you hated superheroes," and he's like, "No, that's not me."
That guy looks yeah. That guy looks like Ed Brubaker, though. I'm pretty sure that's how Sean Phillips draws Ed Brubaker.
Oh, that's funny. I thought it was at first. I thought it was a guy in Freddy Krueger cosplay.
It did look like that, with the little sweater, the way he was, and the little like fedora. I think that's just how Sean Phillips likes to draw Ed Brubaker, though, to make fun of him. So,
that's funny. He like denies this guy an interview, and he says, you can talk to my assistant, we'll schedule it. And the guy's like, what an asshole! I'm out of here.
Yeah, he just starts asking him these general like ambush questions about his career, like knowing nothing about him. And granted, it is 1997. You can't pull up his Wikipedia page and be like, well, it says here you worked on this book. You want to talk about what it was like working with so and so? Like, he can't do that because he doesn't know those things.
Yeah. So they get out of there again, just as they make the announcement that he's finally there to sign. So, who knows? Maybe there was a big line, and maybe a whole line of people rushed back over, but we'll never know. So they go to the bar, and Hal follows some other artist into the bathroom. I forget this guy's name. He's a bit of a nobody, but Hal pulls a gun on him in the bathroom, saying, "Hey, you stole my pages," all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, whoa, where'd this old guy get a gun? All right, this is where we're rolling now. And apparently some woman named Lucinda stole his pages and sold them to that guy, but he's like, no, she said they got him legitimately, all this kind of stuff. And it's like a whole scene. Hal pistol whips this guy, and Jacob's like, all right, we got to get out of here. And they drive away as fast as they can.
Well, and he's like, that's like felony assault, bro. And Hal's like, he's going to tell that story at a bar. He's like, I got assaulted by Hal Crane. Isn't that awesome? Like, he's going to have a bar story. It's going to be great for him. Which is
Hal thinks he's done this guy a favor. He's like, he's going to make so much money off this story. Yeah.
I do love also like how low stakes and petty all the criminalness is in this book. By the way, like it's like there's no diamonds. There's no. We're talking like hundreds of dollars. Like of thieving, like it's. I mean, maybe a few thousand.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd say in the thousands, but yeah, it's not a big deal comparatively.
Yeah, really not a big deal.
And it's like insular to this world, and that's
guns.
what I love how lived in that is. And it's that's what I love about criminals. Everything is so fucking small.
And it does feel like like Hal probably saw or heard stuff like in the 60s and 70s where he's like, this is normal. Like he'll tell this funny con story. It's like, not really. Like this is kind of not going to be a thing people do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like an old Hollywood studios protecting their people thing, which no one's going to protect a freelancer like this, especially at this age. But here.
Right. Well, or it's like, all the like pro wrestling stories from like 2000 or so, like when it's becomes a corporation that's publicly traded and you still have people like, who's like, oh, this is a brotherhood. We have to like initiate people and like humiliate them, like this weird philosophy that this is like a club. Whereas like by the 90s, comics are not really like that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Very insular communities and like just kind of, So they go drive off and they go to confront Lucinda, who is walking her dog. And we're like, who is this Lucinda? We kind of heard that Hal has 3 different ex-wives, so I thought maybe it was something like that. But no, Lucinda is his daughter. And I don't know, and it wasn't super clear on like, did she take these pages? I guess she did. I don't know.
I
she
think
just
the later pages refer to that. Yeah, she did.
Yeah. And sold them to just whoever, and people are like all this time they're also talking to Hal like, hey, what's the big idea? You did this to tons of artists. Like, there's a lot of rumors around this Hal guy and all the terrible things he's done, and it's always unsubstantiated, but at the same time very believable about him. Like that's kind of how everyone treats this guy. Where we don't know for sure that he did, but knowing this guy, he probably did. Mm-hmm. And that's generally everything about him. So they find out who she had sold these pages to, and on the drive back, Hal is telling Jacob, "Hey, listen, I requested you because I know that your dad was a thief, and you said you're in the family business now, and I want to break into this guy's home and get my pages back."
This is where I get like a very like O.J. Simpson vibe.
O.J. Simpson,
because this is what O.J. went to prison
Vegas.
For.
Yeah, Vegas.
Oh, the modern, yes, the new O.J. Yeah,
because he went to prison for stealing back memorabilia, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is where we're going.
Mm-hmm. We're not talking about classic O.J. This is the new adventures of O.J. Simpson, which is
like 2010 Vegas, not the one.
Yeah. The OJ reboot.
But I was also like, really? Y'all got him for that? Like, that seems so like small potatoes. Him stealing back like his like baseball cards and shit. I don't care. Like, he's not baseball, but like,
hey, gotta get him for something.
Yeah.
So they meet up with this Ricky guy. We mentioned him at the beginning of the show, part of that whole crime family. What's his name? Ricky Lawless?
Yeah, Ricky Lawless. So he was a childhood friend of I guess of Jacob's. And Ricky's a kid of Teague Lawless, who was kind of, I cannot remember because I read this book over the span of 15 years. Teague is like a crime lord, basically, or a very high up criminal in their world. Ricky, I think, was more of the fuck up. Tracy was more of like a blunt force instrument of which I don't think they ever refer to Ricky's brother in this one, Tracy. But Tracy
all we really need to know for this book is that Ricky's like a professional criminal, like he's a professional thief.
He's also kind of like a trust fund kid where he like wants to do good by his dad, but he's
he's
a little more of a wild card than your traditional like buttoned up like gentleman's criminal. We kind of skipped over like I really like that there's like a 6-page like back and forth of when Hal was a good artist and Hal was nice to Jacob, that I really like how he weaves in that kind of story, that Hal would get drunk and then show Jacob like his childhood favorite comics that he would cut out of the newspaper and like paste together.
And like we haven't really talked about how Hal was like a hero to Jacob as well, like his idol, and as well as to a lot of other people in the industry who all go to work for him, see him to be an asshole, and then they leave.
Yeah, that's the real like sadness of like, oh, I want to go work for my heroes, and they're just like they're normal people. At best, they're normal people, and at worst, they're like maniacs and megalomaniacs, and they're full of themselves, or drunks, or just disappointing people.
Yeah. They meet up with Ricky. They're going over the break-in plan, and Ricky dresses up as like a UPS delivery guy and ties the guy up, and Hal goes in there to find it, but it's not there. He's got some other pages that are like
they can't send in the criminals. Hal has to go because it might be in a safe, and Hal has to know specifically what they're looking for, and he can't.
Yeah. The original plan is to like go break in when he's not there, and then like, well, what if we need a safe that only that guy has access to? Then we got to do it while he is there.
Right.
Which makes sense. So like if it's jewels or cash, it's a little easier to go. Like just find the cash, find the jewels. But like I'm specifically looking for this.
And like Hal hasn't made it super clear exactly what he's looking for. So he's like, I need to show up there to look at it. And he's like, well, if it's in a safe, then we'll have to do it while he's home. So yeah, they have this not that elaborate. They break into the guy's house and tie him up.
This is an Italian job. This isn't Fast and the Furious. It's a pretty basic break and entry. But like, it always like raised my ears. Like, man, you're creating a lot of liability here. But like, you have to talk to this guy. Like, what if he recognizes you? Like those kind of like real low stakes. Like, how do you get out of this?
But Hal does not care. He just like takes the blindfold off. He's like, "Hey, asshole, where are my pages?" And he's like, "They're down there in the safe." He's like, "No, not those ones. I want the other ones." He's like, "That's all I got." I was expecting like a big heist scene, and instead I just got this old man like yelling at this guy in the closet. And like, oh, all right. I mean, it's more realistic. It's great.
Yeah, and Ricky's like pointing a gun at this like 50-year-old nerd. He's like, "You better be telling the truth." He's like, "Well, yes."
Oh, this guy's so panicked, and again they just like leave, and they're like, "Don't tell anyone." It's like, "Oh, I want to," and again it's the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, this guy was just like apologizing. The guy they tied up was apologizing for everything by the time they left, like that kind of stuff. Oh, poor guy. He's not calling anybody. They go back to the convention, and they go to this award show. They finally convince Hal to do it. They're like drinking at the bar or whatever to convince him, and they say, "Yeah, if you want to tell everybody off, then just go and tell everybody off during your acceptance speech. That'll be great." And Ricky.
I love Ricky in this. He's like, "Who's that? Who is that? Who is that?" Like,
he's so excited to be there and to like see this drama unfold. He just like wants to watch the train wreck.
This like very small scale, like 30-year drama of like, oh, this guy?
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah. Oh, who just won? Who won that award? Oh, cool. All right, here we go. He's gonna get up there. He's gonna say something. But he doesn't. He gives like a touching speech to accept his thing. Like there's a big applause, and Jacob's like, "Huh, actually kind of surprised me." And then after his speech, he turns around and punches Frank Harmony in the face, and everything goes crazy. The cops are there. Jacob gets tasered. Oh, yeah. Good. Everything just exploded. It was good. Good stuff. They talk a little bit about, everything. We kind of decompress a little bit after that. And we get really the end is feels a little bit of an epilogue with Jacob talking about some of the stuff that Hal had showed him back in the past, and talks about Star King, that guy, the driver, Archie Lewis, who died, was just, he was a famous artist, and some studio wanted Hal to take over.
Well,
and Hal
they thought that the property was big enough that Archie could be let go from it, and replaced by this new artist, and Hal too, he's probably in his early 20s at this point. He's like, this is gonna be my big break. I love it. I know I'm gonna probably fuck over my hero, but he'll understand maybe because I'm like creating really good work, and it's in good hands with a fan who really like enjoys Star King.
Right. And so he does all these test pages, and he's excited to show them to Archie to kind of, to get his approval, to get his
it's not going to pan out that way, though.
To get his blessing, right? And it wasn't going to pan out that way. Archie gets word about it like beforehand. They get in a car, and Archie purposefully drives into this wall trying to kill the both of them. And only kills himself, which sucks for him, but that's the story of how it all went down.
Yeah, definitely reminded me of, if you've seen the recent film A Simple Favor. I was like, man, these car crashes are trying to kill the other person. They never work.
They never work.
It is a lot of risk, man.
So he had like gotten drunk and told Jacob this story ages and ages ago when they were assistants, and these missing pages that he has been looking for, he gave them to Jacob and told Jacob to burn them and just doesn't remember it. And so he's been going out looking for these pages, and he just doesn't remember that he gave them away and asked Jacob to burn them. Jacob never burned them. The last panel is him, going into his collection and seeing that he still got them. And so this whole mystery the whole time of where are these pages gone? Well, Jacob had them. That's it.
Yeah. It's a real Maltese Falcon dreams are made of ending where it's just like, oh, this is all for nothing.
Yep. But no, it was good. It's just like it's a fun world to live in for a little while. Especially, I was thinking about this. Like, if you're not a comics fan, would you appreciate this as much? And I think you still would. I think it's it's just about an industry, and it could have been about any industry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like I said, I think this is, Hal's kind of a pastiche of a few different creators. And, I think it's interesting to people, and you don't need, you're not bound by the actual history of something, you can have this, fun, crazy story where he's trying to do this and be slightly larger than life. But at the same time, it addresses, a lot of really real stuff.
Yeah, right. And they did drop a bunch of different names of artists and titles that were real as well. Just kind of weave them in there, which was interesting. They mentioned Wallywood. I remember they mentioned the Man Thing. Who else?
Yeah, I mean they're like, yeah, Stan's going to be at this convention. He's like, Stanley's not going to come to this fucking stupid convention. Which, I appreciate, that kind of perspective. I think, Chris, I think you're absolutely right. There's Hal Crane is not a real person, so you're not, digging the dirt and, pulling out all the dirty laundry about, specific individuals in the industry. But you're also, bringing to light, the toxic parts of comic book history and, how people have been fucked over by the industry over the last 50, 60 years. And I think that's really interesting that Brubaker and Phillips chose to go there. And I think Brubaker and Phillips are some of the few professionals in comics that can do that, because they really write outside of superheroes now. They don't give a shit. And everybody else at Image is not really writing about the history of comics. And even this is a real rare arc for Criminal, that they don't talk about comics that often within Criminal. No. I mean, they're around, and it's they'll talk about Brubaker peppers in the history of comics and other criminal issues, all those Conan books were real, Conan the Barbarian books were real popular in prisons in the 60s and 70s because it was mild softcore pornography that you could jerk off to in prison, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'd never even thought about comics. That's why Conan the Barbarian was appealing. And I remember my father-in-law talking about oh, I loved Conan the Barbarian. I'm like, yeah, you're probably 15 and this is the few ways you could get nudity.
Yeah.
In an easy way. When you're 14, 15 years old. But yeah, Criminal is just such a fascinating book. I would say this is probably one of my lesser favorite Criminal arcs. Last of the Innocent is probably my favorite of their arcs. It's an Archie Betty Veronica pastiche where Archie married, I think, Veronica, and then 20 years later, how that kind of pans out in a very low stakes criminal world kind of way. But yeah, I would absolutely check out anything of Criminal. It's been in several hardcovers now. There's another one coming out. But yeah, I love Brubaker and Phillips. I think that everything they do is worth checking out. Fade Out is my favorite book of the last decade. It's about old Hollywood, and studios covering up scandals. It's really cool, and blacklisted screenwriters. It's very James Ellroy, LA Confidential-esque. But Fade Out is definitely my favorite book of the last of the 2010s. So I would check that one out absolutely.
Yeah, they're all worth checking out. I assume. I haven't read most of the Criminal, but anything that Phillips and Brubaker have done, definitely. And we didn't mention how short this is. This is it's 72 page, I guess more 60 pages, something like that, with all the beginning and ending stuff.
Yeah, it's 3 comic books, basically.
Yeah. And we didn't mention, have any of us read this one before? I definitely.
Yeah, I think Chris had read it also. I think Chris, you were attracted to it. I mean, I read anything by Brubaker and Phillips, so the second I see it's out. But they're so erratic of publishing now that they just come out with they're starting to just come out with original graphic novels and bypassing the issue by issue format, or at least they've done that for the last few years. So I just Google Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, or look them up on Amazon every few months, and be like, oh, they got something new, buying it. They got a cowboy comic coming out later this year.
Yeah, Cowboys.
Yeah, nice. like I said, I think it's very interesting. I read Marvel: The Untold Story, and I know more than I think most people about the actual creators that did this stuff, and so I think it's really interesting. That Hal is, he is in that position where he's like a legend to the people who know who he is. It's a very unique position. And again, Kia, I know you're a wrestling fan. It's like the way that like Stan Hansen or Bruiser Brody are like legends to wrestling fans and like wrestlers, but like regular people are like, who is Bruiser Brody? Like they've never heard of him.
I've never heard that name before.
Mm-hmm.
And exactly. I've watched a few wrestling documentaries. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, like he's a guy that wrestlers are all like, this guy was a pioneer. He would have been a huge star, but he was murdered. So it's a very famous wrestling story. But yeah, so like Gil Kane, he co-creates Iron Fist. He works on Green Lantern in the 60s. He does all that stuff. He's also like born in 1927 in Latvia. Like his life is basically Hal Crane's life.
Yeah, because they talk about Hal surviving the Depression. Yeah.
Right. So he, is a child of the Depression. He, works for superhero comics in the 50s and 60s, works on the like horror or westerns in the 50s, and then does something called the Centurions with Hanna-Barbera in the 70s. So like that's very clearly like the TV show that Hal is known for is like a version of like the Centurions or one of those, Hanna-Barbera shows. He kind of looks like the genie in what was that called? Shazam or Shazang or whatever it was. I'm just thinking of the SNL sketch, but there was a Hanna-Barbera genie show. And that's what Hal's show looks like. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting. We've already talked about the low stakes. I did read one sort of criticism of this book, which I think is fair. I don't know if I completely agree with it. That it's a little, I do think Brubaker and Phillips collaborate, but this is a writer-focused book. And for it to be a writer-focused book about kind of the erasure of the artist from like comic book history is, it's kind of interesting. This isn't like a Jim Steranko style, like strange panels and different art on every page. Like this isn't a tour de force of art. This is like it's serving a noir story, but it's not. It's very clearly to me. It feels like this is and I do believe it's a collaboration, but this is a scripted and then put images to script book, which for a book about a 50s comic book artist who would not have had a script, it's kind of a weird way to do it.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. I don't know if I totally agree with it because man, Phillips like elevates Brubaker in some way. Like everything else Brubaker writes is, and he does stuff with like Michael Lark and he's done some other stuff. But man, if Brubaker isn't working with Michael Lark or Steve Epting or especially Sean Phillips, his work is not as good.
Or Darwin Cook, his Catwoman run was really good.
Oh yeah, that was really good. And was it Cameron Stewart was his artist later? Yeah, if Brubaker's with a great artist, he's really great. Yeah. The art in this definitely never jumped out at me like, oh man, that art. But I just it served the story and did fine. And I'm sure it's very writer focused, but like half the panels you'll look at it are not the narration is not reflecting what's in the art. Like the narration will be either talking about the past but showing images of the present day, or vice versa. Like it's really cool if you go back and like look at it. It's a really good. I think it's a really good meshing of timeline. I think that he does a really good job of meshing timeline well, and I think that Phillips does a really good job. Phillips is very highly photo referenced, but it's good.
Right. Yeah, but like I said, I do think that's kind of a fair criticism that this is not a Marvel method or pre-Marvel method where the artist is like has an outline and is just drawing this and then it's being scripted over. Like that's clearly not what's going on.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, good stuff. Check it out.
Kia, would you read more Criminal or Brubaker Phillips collaborations?
Yeah, of course. I would always read more Phillips and Brubaker. Yeah. They're always a joy to read, and they're quick and breezy, but still substantial.
Man,
yeah.
They come out
breezy yet sleazy.
Yeah, it's usually like 2 or 3 books a year. It'll be an afternoon for me. I'll buy it. I'll go get a coffee or a drink and go sit in my backyard and read a Brubaker Phillips. It's always a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I think we are on now to our long read we're doing, Marvel versus DC, DC versus Marvel. They go back and forth on the titles. But we are on part 2 of 4. What happened last time? Everything just started getting all jumbled together. Peter Parker met Clark Kent. And, we're still kind of getting a feel for what exactly is going on here. I am, going into the second issue, I was starting to worry that this is going to be all splash pages of hey, you wanted to see these two characters fighting? Well, here's a picture of it. And, instead of an actual story about any of this stuff, but we do start to get a few little stories and focuses on a few different subplots.
And we flipped writers again. So now it's Peter David's writing as opposed to Ron Mars wrote issue 1. I'm assuming that Ron Mars writes issue 3 and then Peter David's back for part 4. I haven't looked ahead, though.
I have no idea. Yeah, I'm not looking ahead. But it is also the same 2 artists as last time with Claudio Castellini and Dan Jurgens going back and forth.
And again, this does feel more like Dan Jurgens is like a co-writer with the 3 of them, and they're just switching who's getting credits.
Right.
This is not. Yeah, this does not feel like it's a completely different tone or story or anything like this. Right. Feels like they're just well, you can put your name on these 2, and I'll put my name on these 2.
Because where's Dan Jurgens? In '96, he's a Marvel exclusive at this point, but he's had such a foot in the door of DC for most of his career before that.
He was the writer and artist of Superman for so long that he's a big deal for both. So it makes sense that he's kind of, the main character sort of.
Exactly to your point. I'm I don't really care about the fights. I want to see Peter Parker and Clark Kent hanging out. And the scenes that this book has of that is, I want to see more of that. But I really like that. The idea.
It is an interesting subplot that I know will go nowhere. Of Peter Parker saves Lois Lane from a mother, and she's like, "Really, Peter? I'm fine. You're my hero. Whatever." And he's like, "I'm her hero." What does that mean?
Superman sees with his X-ray vision, should I be jealous of this? But I love there's a scene before that where something is happening with supervillains, and both Peter and Clark are thinking how do I ditch this other guy so I can go return to my superhero costume? That is fun to me. That shit is hilarious. I love it.
Yeah, I love that whenever it happens. Whenever different characters who don't know each other's secret identities think the same thing. That always works on me.
I love that they both have the same thought bubble at that point with the exact same dialogue going through their head.
Yeah.
I have to change my costume. If only I can ditch this guy without his getting suspicious. And I imagine them both thinking that same sentence at their head at the same time.
Yeah, that's I said. I think one of the few people that thinks thought bubbles are kind of a lost art, but thought bubbles can be so funny.
Yeah.
And that's a prime example of that thought bubble. It didn't make me laugh out loud or anything, but I'm that's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, and to the point where I'm I want more of this. And what makes me sad is for the fact that we read some 12-issue books that I feel spun their wheels for 3 issues, cough cough, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Secret Wars. I'm sad there's only 4 issues of this. I feel there's not enough time to explore everything that I want to see.
Yeah, this is a book that needed to spin its wheels just a little bit longer, I think.
And I don't think it did how Civil War would have the entire line be hijacked by Civil War to then explore all the ramifications of it and then come back to it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. To do a Fantastic Four miniseries about what's going on, where you do 3 or 4 issues of here's Spider-Man and Superman working out whatever's going on.
Spider-Man and Superman at the Daily Bugle, man, I want to see that. That's what.
Or imagine the tie-in events if for one arc of Fantastic Four it was just some DC villain that they were dealing with.
Yeah,
and if they had yeah.
Or who could forget the classic pairing of Batman and Nightwing and Wolverine and Gambit?
Oh, that was a fun moment.
That's a high moment when we're not even going into the story here. Wolverine and Gambit stealing the Batmobile. Fuck yes. Yeah,
that was my favorite part. And I was this finally we're getting somewhere. But then it turns out none of that matters because all right. So all right, here's what happens. We've said the good things. We are skipping around a little bit. We've said the good things from the first half. There's some kid named Axel. What was his name? Axel Archer? Not Archer. Something like that. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Some double A name.
Some Axel, and he has I don't even know. There's like two brothers / sisters split apart, yin and yang. I don't know, but they split into the Marvel and DC universes, which then like whatever. That's the overarching story. And these two brothers have like come to notice each other now that the worlds have converged, and they each have their team, and they're like, okay, we're gonna fight. We're gonna do one-on-one fights, and whoever wins more of them is the winner, and then the loser will have their universe get disappeared forever. Cool. But also, everybody in the world hears this discussion, and I wanted more of that. I wanted more of seeing just like human people being like, what the fuck is going on right now? Like, what is this? But that's the idea. Like,
just imagine instead of 9/11, it's just like, where were you the day that our universe discovered that other universe and killed it in a fight?
Yeah, and like some giant god like is talked to all of us, and we could all hear it. Cool. We get
I was in high school. I was in second period when the robot-looking guy said, "You have to fight and defeat these other guys."
It's a great Marvels issue. Let's write another Marvels issue about it.
Perfect. Yeah. So we do get like a little scorecard at the end of this issue with the 11 fights that are going to determine this thing. We'll get to that later. But we get like Darkseid and Thanos, who aren't even like a fight. I don't know why it's all heroes, but they are just talking to each other like, hey, who do you bet on? Like,
right, cool. Didn't Darkseid call Thanos a ripoff of himself?
He did. He's right.
Is Thanos dead at this point also?
It should be the
post-Infinity War, yeah.
Yes, I think Thanos is gone. Like, we haven't seen Thanos since Infinity Gauntlet or Infinity War at this point, or Crusade, whatever it was where he died.
Makes sense. Yep.
I love it.
They like the whole world is also gambling on this. I don't know who is determining the odds. There's a panel of like I think Peter Parker and Lois talking at the Daily Planet with odds up on the wall. I'm like, wait, who knows enough about both of these people to be able to determine any sort of odds? How is that possible?
Yeah, isn't everything a coin flip at this point? How do you know?
How do you know anything? Yeah.
You know what? Like in the world of quarantine and everything like this, like people being stupid and betting on things, like I'm on for. It's plausible to me at this point.
That makes sense. It's just I want to know how they came up with like 9-1 that Thor was going to be Captain Marvel or something like that. You know, I don't remember the exact odds, but I'm like, wow, that seems very unfair for a guy that you've never met before.
Yeah, they just went to a comic book shop. They listened to them for 5 minutes. And they're like, well, these folks seem to know a lot about power levels. 9-1 on Thor.
Yeah. What is it? Oh no, I had that one wrong. Not Thor and Captain Marvel is even odds.
And we're talking about Captain Marvel Shazam, right?
Yeah, which again, it's bothered me that they meet each other. Like, hi, I'm Thor. Hi, I'm Captain Marvel. And there's zero confusion there. Like, hasn't Thor met Captain Marvel?
Yeah, but he's met several. He met Black Captain Marvel, Alien Captain Marvel. In the future, he'll meet Carol Danvers Captain Marvel.
He seems more surprised that both of them like say a word and have like an item that turns them into little boys.
Oh, well, he turns into an adult man.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I love it. Although, was it Namor and Aquaman get mad at each other? Like, are you from Atlantis? No, I'm from Atlantis, man. I like that too. I also, I partially wish they didn't meet their exact parallels. I'd like them to meet people that are different than them, but I'm okay with it.
Right. It's like the two speedsters, like Flash versus Quicksilver. That's 6-3 odds. Here's the one that was 9-1 is Submariner versus Aquaman. Like, Submariner is 9 times more likely to win than Aquaman? Like, where do you get that from? Where are you getting that from?
Well, I mean, if you look at his power levels, he's much stronger, Kia.
He has flooded entire towns, but, you know.
You got to read the handbook to figure out.
But I do remember seeing... Does Aquaman have tiny little wings on his ankle that let him fly? I don't think so.
That's true.
Definitely
I do remember seeing the trading card, like one of my friends had back in the day, of Scarecrow versus Scarecrow, and I was like, oh, that's amazing. But I also don't know who the Marvel Scarecrow is now that I think about it.
Terrible, like, D-list villain. He's like, again, like all Stan Lee characters, he's like some kind of circus freak.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But like Sandman versus Sandman's not in here, but that would be one to see.
That would be a good one. Although Sandman was good at this point.
So?
John Byrne hadn't ruined the character yet.
Yeah. So what else is going on here? We find out that Wilson Fisk has bought the Daily Planet.
Sandman versus Sleepwalker. Now we're talking.
Ooh.
So I don't know why this is important about Wilson Fisk buying anything. Doesn't seem like it's going to come back, but whatever.
Well, and he seems offended that Peter calls him the Kingpin, which I'm like, Wilson Fisk has to know that like part of his staff is going to be like Marvel Universe people that ended up in DC. But also, like, we saw Axel earlier trying to get his ATM money and realizing he doesn't have a bank account in the DC Universe. So where's Wilson Fisk's money coming from?
Cash on hand at all times.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works. That's how it works. He is not fat. He's just padded with cash.
Yeah,
when you're rich, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got that diamond on his little walking stick. He just hawked that and is like, I'm rich again.
Yep.
That's an Infinity Stone in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, the video game.
Wow.
Oh, that's good. That's a good place to put an Infinity Stone.
Some tips and tricks here if anybody's playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3.
So what happens? Thor loses his hammer and Wonder Woman picks it up. And
Thor beats Captain Marvel first.
Right. But like he did it by throwing his hammer and then it's gone, something like that. And
Wonder Woman met Storm for a brief minute.
Yeah.
Man, that would be a cool book too. Wonder Woman and Storm teaming up. Yeah.
We did. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just thinking of like all the books that I would like to spin out of this. Like, if I was a publisher and had been drinking, I'd be like, and hang out with DC and Marvel, like, let's just do this, guys. Let's just make a bunch of books. But I don't think if this happened 10 years later, there would have been a bunch of books.
Yeah, like just little 4-issue miniseries, that are not as good as the main story.
Right.
He's like, but here it is. We did it.
Yeah. We didn't talk much about Quicksilver versus Flash, which was fine. Quicksilver is a bad guy. He's one of the few like kind of bad guys in this lineup of one-on-one fights.
But how dare you?
Okay. All right, maybe not bad guy, but he is a little bit more anti-hero. Yes. Cares more about winning than saving some other folks. But Flash is a bit more of a good Samaritan, which helps Quicksilver get the upper hand, but then Flash still wins? I don't remember how
he gets the upper hand, but then he feels bad about it and doesn't finish Flash off, and Flash is like, oh, you would have had me, and then he beats him. That's the one, as someone who had never, I've never heard of this universe, I knew nothing about this, but I'm betting on Flash.
Yeah. Flash and Quicksilver's actual fighting parts look like Rock'em Sock'em Robots to me. It's just like a flurry of punches that aren't super well drawn to me. I don't know. It looked a little off for me.
Yeah, that's the replacement artist. And the other reason I'm betting on Flash is Flash has some speed. He has like Zoom and other speed-based villains. Quicksilver is able to coast on the fact that none of his villains, like Magneto, has no speed powers. So he doesn't have to push himself the way Flash does.
Flash has always had to up his game, but Quicksilver's like the only speedster. Yeah. Flash beat Quicksilver. Aquaman beat Submariner by like tossing shampoo on him or something. And Thor beat Captain Marvel. So we got 1 for Marvel and 2 for DC. Which
I do feel like is doing Submariner. And Submariner in the 90s is probably at his lowest point because this is before he got joined up with the X-Men in the 2000s. But like this is doing him a little bit dirty. That just a whale falling on him and it's like, well, the fight's over. You lose. Mm-hmm. You can't possibly lift a whale off the ground. It's like he's as strong as the Thing. Like why couldn't he?
Yep, he probably could have. But yeah, it definitely seems like in all these fights so far, the bigger name has won, which makes sense. Flash, Aquaman, and Thor are much bigger than Quicksilver, Submariner, and Captain Marvel. So no problem with that necessarily. But did him a little dirty.
Yeah. Wow.
And what else is going on in the back? We get some bios of a lot of these people and some of the fights that were going on. There is like one panel of Robin sitting in Jubilee's bedroom.
She loves his style, his fashion sense.
Loves his style, and Robin's getting a little tired of it. I think, are they just going to sit there for the whole 4 issues? Because that would be cool.
I mean, they're gonna fight. They're one of the things you can vote on. Stupid.
They are on the list.
Is it going to be like?
Can you vote?
Is it going to be like a couple fight though, or like a physical fight?
All right. Well, now, hold on. I thought there were only 5 fights that you could vote on, and it's like
7.
Chris
I don't remember,
voted,
but there's 11 fights total, but I remember seeing like 5 that you could mail in to actually vote for. I think it's the top 5 ones on this scorecard here: Hulk versus Superman, Captain America, Batman, Storm, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, Superboy, and Wolverine, Lobo.
That sounds.
Was it Wolverine? I don't remember. Whatever. Yeah. We'll get to all that. But yeah, so far, I guess there's a story, and I don't care. It's just some fighting.
I feel bad that I don't care about the fighting, and I want to know more about Peter Parker and Clark Kent working at the planet together.
I want if this book was just Peter Parker, Lois Lane, Clark Kent, Wilson Fisk, I'd be into it.
Actually, that would just straight up that's the book. Yeah, I would be more into that than anything else going on here. I will give credit. I think Dan Jurgens does a really cool 2-page spread of the two. I don't even know what they were. They're the quote unquote brothers, but they're not like the Living Tribunal or whatever. That have been split between the DC universe and the Marvel universe, and it does a really cool way of showing all the faces of who's currently living in the DCU and who's currently living in the Marvel U. I think that's a really cool panel, and I'll have to reconsult that constantly to be like, okay, who's in DC universe right now, who's in the Marvel universe right now.
I just straight up stopped caring because I'm like, they're mixed together, and I don't know who's where.
Yeah, because I think really Batman's hanging out in the Batman's still in DC, but Wolverine and Gambit are now over there right now.
Yeah. Oh, here's one of the things that did. All right, there's a few different things that bothered me throughout all this. They go to some. I don't know who's at this store of comic book memorabilia or whatever, and there's no X-Men stuff anymore. It's all been replaced by WB stuff.
Gosh, and are Warner Brothers stores still around? Like the way Disney stores?
So. I don't think so. No.
They used to be though, right?
Yeah, they existed as a alt Disney store.
All right, listen. This terrible cashier at this store does not know how to set up a display because he has a Pinky and the Brain figurine that is taking up the entire counter space right in front of him for people trying to check out, and it is facing himself instead of the customer. What are you doing, man? That is not how you sell product. But I did like seeing Pinky and the Brain there.
Yeah.
Other thing that go ahead.
No,
sorry.
You go ahead, man.
There's a lot of little things about this book that I wrote, and I'm like, what are y'all doing? Switching Killer Croc and the Lizard, the two most identical villains. Which, if you're just kind of reading this book in passing, I really either one could have been either one. Oh my God, Batman's finally fighting the Lizard. Oh, no, I don't. It's the same thing. No, I don't care.
They've done overlaps where Batman fights Carnage, which is like the Joker, but also different. And I'm for that kind of stuff.
But, that's different enough. But
right, but I think you're absolutely right. Why Killer Croc and why Lizard? They're the exact same. Yeah. Unless they should team up together, like how Dr. Doom and I can't even remember who else teamed up together. And Infinity War. I want to see them snickering together, coming up with plots. The two lizards, they're two peas in a pod and causing trouble. Yeah. That's what I would like to see. I do appreciate though about this book that they're not putting them on a battle world. They're at least staying in their core universes. So there's at least hints at how their universe deals with it. Because I like more of when I like the Daily Planet aspects, and I like the Daily Bugle and Peter's supporting cast in Spider-Man more than I care about whatever he's doing with the villain.
Remember, this is Ben Reilly calling himself Peter.
That's right.
Fuck me.
I forgot about that.
But the thing, that's a good call though. That's a good call, for somebody reading 20 years from now, 25 years later. It's Peter Parker. Let's not try to get stuck in the milieu of where the Marvel universe was at this time.
Yeah. In issue 1, remember, he told them, just call me Peter. And we're like, okay, you got it.
Fine.
It makes it easier to read now, man. Despite it not being a constant publication. Man, I think, Chris, you said that last episode. They really should have just made a deal to keep this in constant circulation and publication. Because, man, I feel like this is a classic, easy pickup at Barnes & Noble if you just would see this on the shelves. DC versus Marvel, it's got all the heroes. I'm going to buy this.
Everybody would read this.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. We haven't even mentioned Captain America fights Bane. Why? I don't really know why they fight each other.
Oh, yeah.
And Captain America has too many stripes on his clothes. It really bothered me.
His costume did look off. I don't know what was going on there.
I didn't notice that. I'm pulling it up. Oh, yeah, that is kind of weird. Very interesting.
It's too many stripes. There's not 3. It's 7 or 8. Red and white stripes. It's too many.
Yeah. Off model.
Bane really gets jobbed out. It's like in 2 pages. Captain America just easily beats him. This guy that like had a 20-part storyline with Batman, and Captain America throws his shield, and Bane is like, "Now I'll break your back since you've thrown your shield away, you fool!" And then the shield hits him.
Yep. Good stuff. My favorite line of the whole thing was after Wolverine and Gambit steal a Batmobile, and Nightwing tells Batman, like, "Hey, should have gotten the club." a real blast from the past right there. It took me a while to remember what the club? What is he talking about? Like, oh yeah, that car prevention stealing, whatever.
Yeah, that baton looking thing you would like stick into your steering wheel to keep people from breaking in. Yeah, I wish there was a panel of Wolverine using one claw to like hotwire the Batmobile.
Oh yeah, that was in something, wasn't it? One of the movies.
I feel like I've seen it before.
Yeah. But yeah, also I feel like I've seen the Batmobile get stolen before, and every time I'm like, the Batmobile's better than that. Like, you can't just waltz into the Batmobile and steal it, you know?
Penguin did it in Batman Returns.
Exactly. That's what makes me feel like, how did you do that? Just do that? All right.
Yeah, I mean, the Batmobile is stupid. Let's be real. We're adults. We live in cities. Having a very fast car, not that useful.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's got fire that comes out the back of it.
I mean, that's fine, but if you build a vehicle where, you know, the Batmobile can lose its wheel and then the Joker can run away, then you know you built something terrible.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, Batman Arkham Knight, the worst one. We don't need a Batmobile.
All right. Well, that's I think all we got to say about Marvel versus DC this time around. Anything else anyone wants to add?
No, I'm despite my complaints with this, I'm liking this more than Secret Wars.
I am. So far, this is one of the best like event comics we've read because it's keeping it short. It's moving fairly quickly. Even if I don't like something, we're past it and on to the next thing.
I'm wanting more, which is weird because like the other ones, I was like, "Fuck this!" Like, get moving.
Yeah, I do like the pace of this. This is like in a hurry. Like this book is racing forward.
Yeah, so we'll get to issue number 3 next time. We'll see what's going on there. We still haven't decided if we're going to read any of the amalgam stuff. Maybe I don't know. We'll figure that out later. But I think was Wonder Woman picking up Thor's hammer? Does that become one of the amalgam issues?
I feel like
maybe.
Okay, so Chris, you can be quiet. But as my prediction, because there's like 12 issues that are going to come out between issues 3 and 4, but they're all like merged histories. Like it's somebody else becomes a super soldier instead of Captain America, and Steve Rogers does some other bullshit. I feel like the universes are somehow going to get like merged in their origins together between issues.
You're right. It's going to be like a temporary merging. Yeah, and we're going to see glimpses of that universe for all those one shots. Right? Yeah, I think you're right about that. Chris, as you mentioned, Vince, Chris has the right to remain silent about that. We'll find out later. Yeah.
Did I already tell everybody how I voted? I mean, I guess
no, you didn't. You wanted to keep a surprise for it.
Yeah, we'll get to it next issue when the things I voted on start happening.
Great, I can't wait. Yeah, I think I mentioned maybe my predictions, and I don't even remember what they were. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, next time we'll go on to issue number 3, and what are we reading next time? Ooh, Ninja Turtles. We've never read any Ninja Turtles comics on this show. You know, it's worth mentioning. I'm sure we all know the cartoons and the movies.
The movie's 30 years old as of like last month or March or April or something. Yeah, the Sam Rockwell starring Ninja Turtles 1.
Wow, starring. But no, they started out as comic books, black and white comic books, in the mid '80s that were kind of a Daredevil parody, right?
And an X-Men parody and Teen Titans parody.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And they're
making fun of the hand and the foot soldiers. Mm-hmm. The foot is a parody of the hand, and they're part of Daredevil's origin. The car that veered out and blinded Daredevil, that ooze, also created the ooze of the Ninja Turtles. It's fucking stupid. But it's like teenage, like the Teen Titans and X-Men, or Teen Titans, Mutant like X-Men, Ninja like Daredevil, and then Turtles. It's a straight parody.
It's perfect.
But
perfect.
Like, what is it, like 84 we decided?
It's somewhere like 83, 84, something like that.
The movie's out, the live action movie's out by 1990. The cartoon is either 88 or 89. Like,
yeah, they grew fast.
Huge, really quick.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, they're mutants.
But the comic is much different than the cartoon that we got. I know that in terms of tone.
Yeah, so I've never read any of these. I'm real curious to check them out and just kind of see what the original stuff was like here. Written by Eastman and Laird.
Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, if I'm not mistaken. My notes I haven't gone back to. I read issue 1, and it's very similar to the 2003 series, like word for word for the first issue or first episode of the 2003 Ninja Turtles, but it's much darker and much more noir-y. I hope it's not too much like The Tick. It's just like silly parody, but I think it's going to probably try to play it pretty straight.
Yeah, I think it does. So yeah, well, we'll see how that goes.
Issues 1 through 7, whatever we're reading. There's tons of collected editions you can find of the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, it seems like 1 through 7 is like the first like little-ish volume that you can buy. So that's what we're going to estimate we're reading here. And what else? Anything else going on with y'all? Anything interesting? Your Stupid Minds? What's going on there?
We're still a podcast. We have episodes about bad movies that you can watch at your leisure or listen to at your leisure, and then watch the movie also at your leisure. We should be having an episode coming out soon. I don't know what it's going to be yet.
Great. Vince, what's up with you?
Your recommendation of Color Out of Space from a couple episodes ago. I finally watched that with my wife, Kimberly. It was really enjoyable. Nicolas Cage, H.P. Lovecraft, low-budget film. Really cool. I liked it.
Oh boy, and Nicolas Cage just getting to go insane. It's just let him loose, and it's always fun.
I bought it for Kimberly's birthday, which was this past weekend, and I was like, she loves Nicolas Cage. She loves him going crazy. She loves Lovecraft. She loves Island of Dr. Moreau, which is the same director. So she was on board.
Great. Cool. Well, thanks so much for listening. I got nothing going on, just working. That is what it is. And I'll try and I'm sure there's something interesting going on in my life, but I can't think of anything right now. We'll talk about it later. I'll try and keep a list for all of our fans to let y'all know what's going on with me, because I know you're curious. You're curious to know. People keep emailing us. They're on the boards going, we want to know, give us a tour of Kia's recording studio. No, sorry, not going to happen.
Unboxing of Kia's fridge. They want to know what the party's going on in the background that nobody can hear. If you can hear a party going on in Kia's backyard.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was some party going on.
I'd never heard
in my backyard directly, but my window faces a backyard. And I feel like this whole time I can hear music, but hopefully the microphone doesn't pick it up here.
So you heard that party. They probably had more fun than we. Actually, know what? I liked Criminal. I liked Marvel vs. DC issue 2. I had a great time.
Yeah, this was a party, Vince.
Yeah.
PARTY, a good quarantine Zoom party. We were doing this 5 years before anybody else was.
Yeah. Ahead of the game here. Social distancing since who knows how long for me. All right. So we're done. Have a Vince, I love you.
I love you too.
Chris, I love you.
Kia, I'm expecting you in another dimension.
This is great. I don't know how this became a trope of our endings here. And you, the fans, the readers, the listeners, we love you as well. Thanks so much for listening.
Too, Kia. How did y'all get on mic, guys?
Okay, bye everybody.